If you live in the UK, you might remember this, or you might not. In the early 1990s, some jobsworth from the Department of Transport noticed that with accident statistics, in the event of a motorcycle being hit at a full 90 degrees from the side by another vehicle, riders' legs were being crushed, and he came up with the idea of leg protectors. Basically an enlarged pair of engine guards that stuck out from either side of the bike to protect the rider's leg in the event of that 90 degree sideways impact from another vehicle. He wasn't a motorcyclist himself, but he did work for the government, so the government listened to him. Some cursory, very limited tests were carried out, i.e. only 90 degree impact tests. And although they didn't work all the time, they decided that it was successful enough that they would make it law that all bikes from a certain date would have to have leg protectors fitted. Motorcyclists could see the folly of this, but the government wouldn't listen to them. The Motorcycle Action Group, or MAG, could see the folly of this, but the government wouldn't listen to them. Leg protectors had entered the statute books, and that was that. At the 11th hour, the Motorcycle Action Group managed to scrape together enough money to have proper independent crash tests done, and the results were appalling. Not only were they not particularly effective in the situation that the government had in mind, in other circumstances they proved to be downright dangerous. And tests showed that these leg protectors, far from protecting legs, were in fact going to vastly increase the incidence of broken and even severed legs. The facts were presented to the government, the legislation was repealed, and the whole thing was quietly swept under the rug. Now, this whole thing really opened my eyes to the question of crash bars or engine protectors. And ever since then, I've avoided these large sort of butterfly wing type crash bars because the design is quite similar to those leg protectors from the 90s. And I've always favoured more compact engine hugging designs. Not only that, I think they look better. It's a design that you don't see that often, and there isn't always a design like that available for every motorcycle. So I was especially pleased when I saw that Royal Enfield are producing their own stainless steel compact engine bars. They are a compromise, and I don't consider them to be foolproof. But to my eye, they look nice, they don't spoil the lines of the bike, and they should afford a reasonable degree of protection to the engine cases in the event of your bike falling over or a low speed tumble. I don't know what it is about Royal Enfield accessories packaging. It's very basic, just a brown cardboard box with Royal Enfield's name stamped on it in red, but I find it really appealing. Both engine bars come inside the cardboard box wrapped in bubble wrap. And the only other items that you'll find in the box are some instructions that are so small you need a microscope to read them, and 3 replacement bolts, these being just a few millimeters longer than the originals that are on the bike. The bars are made from a polished stainless steel. I've got no idea what grade stainless steel it is. They've got a reasonable weight to them, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be up to the job. The finish is pretty good, although not perfect. And each bar comes with the Royal Enfield name etched into the top. Fitting is quite straightforward. You will need a 14mm open-ended spanner, a reasonably comprehensive socket set with 1 or 2 extension bars, and preferably 2 14mm sockets. You'll also need a torque wrench. Now, starting at the right hand side, the lower engine mounting bracket. Remove the bolt that holds the engine to the bracket. Retain both spacer washers and the nut to reuse on this project. You won't be needing the actual bolt again, but I'd advise that you just put it to one side. These sort of things always come in handy. When you've done that, repeat exactly the same operation on the left hand side. With those 2 out of the way, turn your attention to the upper front engine mounting. You may need two sockets for this one to actually unscrew it and one to hold the other side while you're doing so. I managed to do this on my own, and I also managed to put everything back together on my own, but it might be a good idea to have a friend help you with this just to make it a little bit easier, because it is a bit of a reach around the tank to the other side to hold the other side of that fastener in place. Again, when you remove this, retain the spacers and the nut. You won't be needing the bolt again. And I will say all the bolts came out very easily. Now, don't worry about the security of the engine in the frame at this point. There are plenty of other brackets holding the engine in place, so nothing actually moves, although I wouldn't suggest trying to ride the bike in this state. And it's now time to start fitting your bars. Now, these replacement bolts in the kit don't seem to be quite as good quality as the originals, and I suspect that they're not stainless steel, so I would grease all of them up before fitting them. Just make sure that you don't get any grease on the actual thread that you're using, because it may affect your torque settings when you're fastening it back up. The grease is there mainly for protection against the elements and to stop them corroding. I used Silcolene's RG2 grease because I have plenty of it on hand. I'll leave it up to you which you use. So, using your freshly greased long bolt out of your kit, along with the spacers that you've retained, thread it through the top lug of your new engine bar and insert it into the engine. Just allow it to sort of hang there in a way that it won't fall off, and then prepare one of the other shorter bolts out of your kit with your grease and your spacers and thread that through the bottom lug of your new engine bar. Sticking with your bottom bolt for the minute, place your other spacer on the other end of it, thread your nut on and tighten it up. Don't tighten it all the way up at this point, just make sure that it's firm. We'll torque everything up at the end. Then going around to the right hand side of the bike, holding your long bolt in place with your finger to make sure that you don't push it out, place your right hand engine bar onto that bolt and repeat the same process for the left hand side bottom bolt with the right hand side bottom bolt. Finally, replace the top nut to the top engine bracket. Check everything's straight and as it should be. You shouldn't have any problems. And to be honest, I don't think there's going to be much in the way of adjustment if you do have a problem. And then go around and torque all your fasteners up to 45 Newton meters. Now, with the bottom bolts, I was able to hold the nut on the other side in place with an open-ended spanner while I torqued it up. The top bolt is a little bit more difficult because I couldn't get my hand through the gap in front of the cylinder head, and I ended up sort of standing on one leg while reaching over the top of the tank with another socket and a small breaker bar holding the nut in place while I tightened it up. I managed it, but it wasn't ideal. As I say, it may be easier if you just have a friend to hold it for you while you torque it up. And that's the job done. I don't see any reason why anybody with the correct tools can't do this at home. And just to preempt any inquiries about the RG2 grease that I've used, I'll leave a link in the video description down below. Now, for those that are interested, I do have the Royal Enfield sump guard for this bike, and fitting does seem to be a little bit more involved than your average sump guard. People have expressed concerns over it. I will be making a video, please bear with me. I can't make all the videos at once, I just don't have the time. I'm also stacked out with other projects at the moment, but I will get onto it as soon as I possibly can. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this video and found it useful. If you have, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel. I'll be back next week, so until then, ride safely and I'll see you soon.